Takes an average of 3 minutes to decide on a tender. How is that even possible?
Yeah.
Coming up.
Practice. Practice your pitch. Practice your one paragraph, the one that's going to convert them. Then, if your solution is a Rolls Royce, you need to tell them why. Lean on your facts as well. Bringing my perspective to that table is power.
Deals have a lot to do with feeling.
Yeah.
And emotions.
Be vocal about what you're thinking. You are not there to sell your identity, but to sell your value.
Like, where is all the blind spots?
Is when you get asked a question that you do not know how to answer, you ask a question back. But answer the question. Tell me why it's important. So you've got to acknowledge why I'm asking for it. Like this person or not? Like, how do they come across in their documents? Right? What do they say about my company that tells me something about them? That's a little giveaway that either I like them or I don't.
Before we dive into today's conversation, a heartfelt thank you to our sponsors who make this podcast possible. Your support helps us share powerful stories, spark important dialogue, and amplify voices that matter. We're proud to partner with brands that believe in our mission and invest in meaningful conversations. Today, we're diving into a topic that can literally change the trajectory of your career, your finances, and even your confidence. The art of negotiation. You see, negotiation is something many of us shy away from, whether it's asking for our first salary, requesting that long overdue promotion, or pushing back at the executive table without being labeled difficult. And yet, negotiation isn't just about numbers. It's about how we value ourselves, how we influence others, and how we create opportunities for ourselves and others. For women especially, negotiation is non-negotiable. Studies show that women often undersell themselves, hesitate to ask, or face biases that make the process even tougher. But when we learn to suss up our negotiation skills, we unlock doors not only for ourselves, but for every woman who comes after us. My guest today is someone who knows this game inside out, Dheshnee Naidoo. So, known as a true negotiation queen, Dheshnee has led some of the most high-stake bid management teams in South Africa, working with listed companies and navigating deals where billions are on the table. What makes her relentless is not just her ability to secure the win, but her ability to read the room, cut through the noise, and hold her ground with clarity and confidence. Today, she's here to share how we can sharpen our negotiation edge, where we often go wrong, what we're doing right, and why mastering this skill is especially critical for women in every stage of their career. So without further ado, Dheshnee, drum roll. We've been talking about this now for a long time, and I'm glad that you're finally here.
Thank you, Carmen. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Perhaps let's open up the table. What does negotiation mean to you?
Negotiation I think it means a lot of different things to different people, but to me it means proving my worth and making sure that my value speaks for itself. So getting the other person to understand who I am and what I bring to the table.
100%, that makes a lot of sense. But what if you don't know your worth?
You take the do's and the don'ts, but you reframe that with your authenticity, and that's who you are in the room, because people always value people that are being real. Then you've got some work to do on yourself, right? You've got to understand who you are first and foremost. As a mixed race woman, I had to dig deep and try to understand who I was and who I was representing and what I was bringing to the table. So you've got to do a lot of work, and you've got to answer a lot of questions, and you've also got to leverage off your network. You've got to understand, from your mums to your sisters to your grannies, and your sisters that are not related by blood as well. You've got to understand from them, what do they see you as, and what is the impact that you can make in this world? What is your purpose, and how do you align to that? And I think once you do that homework and delve into those insights, and you're not going to know the answers immediately, and not everything's going to come together and you're going to have exactly who you are. I think that is, you evolve over time, but I think that helps you understand your worth and how you can own the room authentically, and then, be able to speak to the other person about what you're worth.
Tell me a little bit about where do we typically go wrong when it comes to negotiation?
I think where most of us go wrong is we, first of all, haven't done the work, so we don't know our worth and our value, and we don't believe in ourselves. And we think the biggest thing that I've done wrong in my career is thinking that my difference was my weakness, right? We all have differences and we all have those negative perceptions of ourselves, and we want to hide that very quickly, and we want to, not talk about it and not bring it up. But actually, we should lean into it. So I think the first thing that we do wrong is we don't lean into our differences. We don't see it as a strength. We need to reframe that in our minds and see it as a strength. With me as a mixed race woman, for instance, as an example, I know that I hid it for a long time, but then I came to realize that perspective is definitely power. So it's not a weakness. It's my perspective. Bringing my perspective to that table is power. And I'm the only one that can do it. And so lean into your differences is one thing that I would say. The other thing that I would say is be vocal about what you're thinking and take emotion out of the table and lean on your facts as well. Do your homework, prep, stay calm. You are not there to, I'm looking for the word, you are not there to advocate for your identity, but you're there to advocate for the value that you bring.
Sure. And what else do you see like going wrong, for example, on costing? Sure. My word for the year is altitude. And I've really been diving into what that means for me. How do I achieve altitude and everything that I do, and how higher heights than ever before. And it requires a lot of reflection, negotiation, asking for what you want. But also at the same time as seeing the obstacles that stand in your way of reaching your altitude. And what I'm learning is it's a lot more to do with attitude than it has to do with aptitude. And that for me is very, very interesting. The moment I started looking at it, you have to say this specific thing in this specific order, but rather looking at it as an attitude of this is my non-negotiables.
Yes.
This and this is why authenticity is so important, because you know where your value system sits, and you say, okay, right, if you know your values and understand the core of your values, you won't expand yourself beyond of what sits well with you.
Yes.
And be in friction with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Authenticity for me is my professionalism.
Oh, love that.
That's you have to be authentic. It is my professionalism. So it's exactly what you're saying. It's that attitude reframing, right? Definitely. It's not what we are taught to say, and specifically in this conversation where we're talking about do's and don'ts, right? It's not specifically about that. It's how you take that and reframe it according to your authenticity.
Yeah.
Right? So that you are real, you're in the room, and you are present in that moment and you own it. That's exactly what you're saying about attitude, right? You take the do's and the don'ts, but you reframe that with your authenticity, and that's who you are in the room, because people always value people that are being real.
Yeah, 100%. And especially when it comes to deals, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is
Yes.
Deals have a lot to do with feeling.
Yeah.
And emotions.
It does.
In your view?
Absolutely. It absolutely does, because you're already on the edge, right? They wanting to know what are you going to push them on and what are you going to be able to cave in on, right? So it's definitely about feelings, and it's also about, do I like this person or not? Like, how do they come across in their documents, right? What do they say about my company that tells me something about them? That's a little giveaway that either I like them or I don't, because people do business with people they like and they trust, right?
True.
So it's absolutely about feelings and emotions. And so you've got to somehow, when you come into the room, you've got to bring down that feelings and emotions a little bit, but still speak to it and kind of acknowledge the fact that, listen, I'm not here for anything outside of what we are about to negotiate, and we are going to negotiate a win-win deal for both you and I, right? We're in a partnership because of what I can bring to the table and what that will be able to do for you. And, you know, they all have a buyer always has a concept that they want to either fix, avoid, or accomplish. If you know what that is, right, then you can talk to that, and this is the benefit of fixing or avoiding or accomplishing a certain thing.
Negotiation and bringing down the emotions. How do you do that?
You do that because you are prepared and you come with the facts and you know your material. You know, and you need to be able to, when you prepare, you've got to be able to understand what is that other person going to counter with, what type of questions will they come with, what's important to them, so that you can prepare for that. So that's important, knowing your material, preparing, and then staying calm, because you know that the work that you can do, that you are bringing to them, is going to add value to them in whatever that is. So a certain bid that I'm doing for a customer, for instance, that wants to, bring in a service into the building, into the corporation, which is business writing, for instance, right? I know that that business writing service is going to elevate their game when it comes to their customers. So I know the value that that brings. Plus, the facts have spoken to it already, right? Around how we've increased customers' win rates because of that particular service. And the professionalism of their documents have gone up, and their win rate has gone up. So I know the value, I know my material, and I've done my preparation in terms of what does it mean to them? What is their win rate right now? Where will it take it to? Based on what are their strategic plans and where they want to go, based on their customer base. So that is bringing down the emotion and just speaking to the facts, just making sure that they understand what the benefits those facts will bring. And being an expert in your material, right? Then they know they want to talk to experts. They want to talk to somebody who knows their stuff because they want to focus on their core business. So you need to bring that edge into it. The fact that you are experts at this, you've done this before, this is your testimonials and your case studies that speak for you instead of you. And here's the facts. This is what the benefits will reap.
I'm curious to know, looking at it from the other side of the table, where do you see people typically go wrong when they hand in tenders, when they negotiate on their pricing? Like, where is all the blind spots?
There's a lot of blind spots that come up. But for me, I think it's the first thing that I see is people don't answer the question. So they will go around and round the question instead of answering it head on. Answer the question, bring in the facts and bring in your story, but answer the question. So
can you give us an example?
An example of that would be, so for instance, if I ask on the side, if I ask for a tender and I say you need to add in your tax clearance certificate, for instance, as an example, as statutory, they would probably then say, well, they'll get it to me in 3 weeks' time because, it's expired. But they're not really answering the question of why is it important to have a tax clearance. So if they had reframed that question with, the importance of having a tax clearance certificate is to show that I'm a South African company that's abiding by the laws and regulations, and this shows...
You answer it like that.
So you answer it like that, right? However...
Okay.
Mine is in dispute because of whatever. It could be your, the auditing faculty. It could be the fact that, there's some discrepancies on your financials and you're still getting that through. But answer the question. Tell me why it's important. So you've got to acknowledge why I'm asking for it. So answer the question and then reframe it with, I will get this. Here's my, here's something that shows it's in progress. So it's evidence that it's in progress. I'm not just, saying that it will be, but, I've answered the question.
That's fascinating. And what else do you see like going wrong, for example, on costing? I do recall when you did a masterclass for our community on bid management. One of the things that you did mention was comparison and having something, comparing apples to apples and pears to pears.
Yes.
Because how am I supposed to make a decision if you don't have competitors?
Yeah, absolutely. You need to at least answer the question as well with your costing. If they want a BMW, you got a cost for a BMW. But then if your solution is a Rolls Royce, you need to tell them why. You need to show them that BMW isn't going to cut it for what they want. They actually want the Rolls Royce. And sometimes it's the other way around, right? But you've got to answer the question so they can compare with the other competitors that they've received costings for. So that comparison has to be there. So that's the first golden rule, is always answer the question, but then give them your value behind that, right? So that they can see that you've thought about it and that you do have their best interests at heart. You understand that, oh, so this system that you're asking for, in order to implement it, you would need the foundation first. And the foundation consists of 5 principles and not 3, which you've asked us to cost for. We can do it that way, but then you'd have to, at some point in time, bring in those other 2 elements that aren't there. So you've got to give them what they ask for, but then you've got to read between the lines and acknowledge what they're trying to fix. Again, it's the concept, right? You've got to acknowledge what it is that particular concept, define it, and tell them how, because you want to also align your expectations with theirs. So that's important.
And I also know through, from a creative perspective, visuals and, bringing elements to the table really does make you stand out.
Once it pops out from all those different proposals, right, on the desk or documents on the desk, whatever that is, right, then that's the one that I will benchmark everybody else against. So yes, it is really important to bring in visuals and graphics. Don't put an Excel table in, put it in, but then pull it out in a pie chart or a graph that just looks already, like it's something you want to delve into, and it's showing you the right trend.
Yeah. And also a decision on a bid, like I think it was one of the APMP conferences where they mentioned it takes an average of 3 minutes to decide on a tender. How is that even possible?
Yeah, right. Because they look at the stack of the document and they can tell whether you've put in as many statutory documents as they've asked for. They know they've asked for like brochures and, scope of materials and, all of that. And if it's, you can see if that there's been thought put into it or not. And also it's the visual element, right? If there's a picture that speaks to the business or to the service description, then absolutely they're going to pick that up first. If it's bright colors and if it's a lot of pictures and if it's well tabulated on the side and if it's in a nice lever arch file, absolutely. So 3 minutes is what it takes, right? But it's because of that visual enhancement that they need to see, and then also, understanding from an evaluation perspective what they're looking for. They know they've asked for a massive document, and you have given them one small little lever arch file. So clearly, you haven't really complied.
That's 3 second
and
decision.
Yeah. Don't we all do it though? 3 seconds, right?
I know, right? Being on autopilot.
Yes.
What advice can you give to youngsters in terms of how to negotiate for themselves? Because, there's such a high youth unemployment rate.
For the youth of today, I would say, stay calm and be prepared and know your worth. Really, really know your worth. So you know that you are agile, that you can adapt quickly, that you learn quickly, and all of those things are really critical skills to have in an organization. You know that you're a team player and you've done projects at universities with, your peers, and you've been able to pull them together and get the thing back on track when it was derailing. So those are the skills that you have which are critical in big organizations. So know your worth and know your value, know the value that you bring to the room, stay calm and, with respect, question as well, and know that going into that room, you're bringing a fresh perspective. You're bringing a perspective that nobody else can bring. And I personally, I love the youth. I love the perspective they bring.
Yes,
they are teaching me, they are schooling me every day, not just on technology and all of these other different things, but their perspectives are just so amazing. And so that is what you have that we don't have. And organizations, so many organizations need that fresh burst of perspective, plus the agile thinking and the adaptability and the quick learning. So not everything is about cost. It's about the value that you bring to the table. And when you are at that table, you belong. So don't throw it away by focusing on your weaknesses and what you don't bring. It's all about building your confidence and your credibility when you feel you have no authority, but believe me, you do. Your authority gives you your perspective gives you your authority and your power in that room.
Yeah. And I mean, just for the audience, either you serve your weakness or you serve your purpose. and know your purpose, know why you're there,
Yes.
know why you're in the room. And that's where it comes to
Yes.
know your worth, right?
Absolutely.
And I think it would be, okay, I'm trying to think how I'm going to say this, but if we think about being the only person in the room and you're a youngster or a person of color and you feel like you need to hold yourself back, what is your advice to the youngsters and having yourself heard? Because I always say to the young people, you're not the future leader, you are leading right now. There's somebody else that's looking up to you, and don't underestimate, as you mentioned, don't underestimate the power and how much life you bring and value you bring. What is your recommendation and advice to youngsters around?
I would say to them, don't apologize for being you, and don't apologize for wanting to grow. It might seem, so often we hear, and as women we've often heard that we are aggressive when we ask for, for growth opportunities, or we are, again, too aggressive or too vocal when it comes to saying what's on our mind. But I would say, please don't apologize for that, because you do want to grow and you bring your own perspective, you bring your own flavor. Don't shy away. In fact, stand taller. And if you are prepared, and if you come with your facts, and if you come with your authenticity, right, then, that is something that somebody will respect. So don't shy away. Actually, don't blend into the room. And you can do that respectfully. You don't have to. Remember, there was a speech that I heard a couple of weeks ago at the Brave Collective, and they said, choose a moment of bravery, which really resonated with me, because we cannot be brave all the time. So you're already nervous going into that room, and that's fine. We all feel that at some point. But know who you are and your worth. Come prepared. But also choose your moments of bravery, right? You're not going to talk their entire meeting through. You aren't going to be expected to show your value the entire meeting through. So choose your moments of bravery. Choose a space where you can speak up confidently to say what you are feeling and what you have researched and what you've learned and your perspective. And then you can sit back again and listen to others, saying what their perspective is. But choose your moments of bravery. You do not need to show your value and prove your value the entire time you're in the room, but own it. Know that that is what you bring to the table. So don't shy away. Don't blend in. In fact, stand tall and know that that's what you bring.
Well answered. Okay, so there's a few questions that I want us to focus on in terms of, let's look at the art of negotiation. So you've done all the work, you've submitted it, now you're doing your final pitch, or you're going in for that meeting in front of the board and you have to now explain your solution, or it's your first business deal. And your entire business relies on this moment. This is your lose yourself, like Eminem moment.
Yes.
Like you come in there and you're like, okay, right, I only have this one moment. Let's talk through the process of preparation. What is your non-negotiables? What do you need to prepare for that particular meeting? Is there particular questions that you need to have top of mind? And let's go through that preparation that you need to do the day before. It's not just about what you're pitching and how you're delivering that, because sometimes we focus so much on what we need to say and deliver the pitch, but we don't think about all the questions that they might ask. And then when they ask them, that one thing that you answer incorrectly could really set you up to lose everything, no matter how well you present it. So let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So it's important to be prepared, and it's the day before you're going in for your first business deal. Preparation happens weeks before, right? Weeks before. You need to understand who the stakeholders are in the room. Is it a financial person? Is it a technical person? Is it a person that's going to use the system? Who are the people that are going to be in the room? Because you need to speak to their concepts, right? So the financial person holds the purse strings. They want to know the ROI, right? So you need to have those figures up front. When will your solution pay for itself? When? Is it 3 years? Is it 6 months? When are they going to start to see that return on investment? If it's a technical person, you better know the specs, right? And understand, what the downtime is like. If that does happen, what is the mitigation plan? So you've got to know, so understand who is in the room. That's your first thing. And it happens weeks before your pitch. You've got to understand who's in the room, who you're talking to, and what their interests and what are their needs, right? Because that's important to them, right? That's why they're there. They're in that room to tick some boxes, and you need to be able to get them to tick those boxes, because if they don't tick those boxes after your pitch is over, then they're not choosing you. So you've got to do that preparation. That's important. Understand who is in the room and who you're talking to and what area they are responsible for, so that you can cover those areas. If you have a health and safety representative in the room, you've got to understand how your solution is going to talk to the health and safety aspect, because then why are they in the room? Clearly it's important, right? So you've got to understand who's in the room and how your solution talks to the different roles that they embody. So that's preparation. And then,
Can I ask you a quick question? Are
yes.
you permitted to ask who's going to be in the room, and to have a list of all the representatives so that you can prepare?
Absolutely. It's a must. So whenever we're going into a clarification session or a briefing session, or we actually the pitch itself, we at that stage we ask who's going to be in the room, so that we can get a feeling for what is needed to be prepared. So absolutely, you need to ask. In fact, it's a non-negotiable, right? You've got to ask who's in the. They might not always tell you, but then you're going to have to think about who do you think would be in the room. There has to be a financial person. There has to be somebody technical, because they need to know how your solution is going to work. Think about your solution and all the gaps that it's filling at the customer, and then think about, based on that, who will be in the room, because they want to know all they need to know to be able to move you on to the next stage. The second thing, besides knowing who's in the room, is speaking to the why, right? Why you? Why your solution? How does your solution, how do you fix their particular problem? So do your research. Go and look at their annual reports. What's in their strategic goals? Where are they going? What are some of the challenges they're having, right? So that you can position your why. So you can close that gap, so that they can clearly see where you fit in and the benefit that you will bring. Often we leave that out because we kind of talking to what they've asked for in the RFX, right? But we don't talk to the underlying need that they haven't particularly stated, which is why they actually want that solution and service. Maybe that particular business unit is not doing as great, and so this solution will save some manpower, but also bring in the results that's needed, right? So then you've got to talk to that, the why. You've got to position yourself. And the one thing that I will always say is be concise when you do say it. Practice. Practice your pitch. Practice your one paragraph, the one that's going to convert them to your side. Practice that. It aligns with who's in the room and what they want to hear, but it also aligns with your why and, how you are filling that gap for them, right? Spell it out. Spell it out, because they sometimes don't even know that's exactly what they want. But if you bring in, in your annual report, I've seen X, and this will actually, mitigate Y from happening, then, you're talking facts. So even though they won't know it, they know you've done the research, you've read, your material, and you know that this can do that. And then the third thing, so stakeholders and your why, and practice it, right? The third thing that you need to do is you need to be able to show them the evidence that you can do what you say you're going to do. Because those are the three questions that evaluators ask. Can they do it? Will they do it? Have they done it before? Those type of questions. It might
and
not
the
be
results
exactly
of what
those
you've
three.
done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you need to answer their questions before they ask them, in a sense. So you've got to preempt what it is that those stakeholders are going to want to see, what's important to them, like we said, the financial buyer and ROI. What's important to them, you've got to practice your pitch, you've got to make it concise and compelling, and you've got to align your why with their why. Why are they looking for this particular service or solution?
I want to hone in on the CFO, because the CFO is always the one that's going to make the final decision.
Yeah.
And how can you position your ROI in a creative way? Because sometimes if you have a new product or a new invention, or you have something new to bring to the table, how do you get buy-in? How do you analyze the CFO and prepare to the best for that moment with the CFO? Because ultimately they make a decision, and they're very different. They like facts, no fluff.
Yes.
Talk facts and figures, foundation. How are we going to build from this? And are we going to see and yield the return on investment, as you say, over 3 or 5 years? And I think that is a part that is truly underestimated, is really understanding how the CFO thinks.
Absolutely. So you hit the nail on the head when they want to see ROI. And even if you can't give it to them immediately, when? So they're all about facts and figures, and they're all about ETAs, right? When is it going to happen, right? I need to know. And so that's important. Also, you need to think about, do your research about that specific CFO. Understand where they've come from. What is their history? So if you can take an analogy, say, for instance, the CFO is at a pharmaceutical company that you're pitching to, right? But they've come from a banking industry. Use an analogy from their past that will get them thinking about their past, and it's an analogy that will resonate with them because they've done it for so many years, and it's nostalgic. Right, so it's something that's going to take them back. It's a positive connotation, hopefully, but it's something that will resonate with them. You've done your homework. You've researched. And we have to be creative about the facts. We have to be concise, and we have to answer the question. Right, so he's going to want to know ROI. You've got to answer that ROI, but do it in a creative way. Bring in an analogy, right, and talk about that. And so do your research. Understand where that particular CFO is from. What is their history? What are the industries they've worked in? And so tailor your creative way of bringing in your ROI and your facts and figures to something that will resonate with the CFO. And then you've got his attention. Then, once you have his attention, you've got to clinch the deal. Right? Then you're going to practice your statement, your value proposition statement about why it's important that they hire you. So
that makes a lot of sense, and I love that you're bringing in storytelling as a way to sell to the C-suite. Because it sometimes helps to convey the point, and I love that you can go and say, okay, right, here is the person that we're analyzing. We suspect the CFO is going to be there, or somebody representing him. Like, let's just have a better understanding of his past so we can actually bring that to the forefront. Now, okay, so we move into the next phase. So now I have done all my preparation, and it's on the day. And some meetings go very well. Some are amazing, but sometimes there are questions that hits you from the side, and you feel like you are in a blender, and you're like, oh my word, how am I going to answer that? How do you gather yourself if you don't have the answer in that moment? How do you turn it around in that particular moment when you don't have the answer? And is it okay to sometimes say, like, I don't have the answer right now. I'm going to go back and do my numbers, and I'm going to see how we can actually work this out, and I'm going to come back to you.
So the first thing that you do is, when you get asked a question that you do not know how to answer, you ask a question back. Right? You ask a question back because it is, let me understand what it is that you are asking. So let me break it down. So if I hear you correctly, you are asking X, Y, Z. Is that right, or am I not understanding? So you get them to elaborate a little bit. First of all, it buys you some time, right, to think about it. And then secondly, it helps you get a better understanding, exactly that, a better understanding of what it is that they've asked. Because if you aren't prepared for it, and it's come from left field, then clearly you haven't thought about that angle, which is fine, right? We can't, have an answer for absolutely everything, right? There are going to be sometimes where,
unless you grab ChatGPT while you're at it.
Unless you grab ChatGPT, yes.
Oh, I'm joking.
But we're not going to have it all the time. So it's important to, buy yourself some time, but understand where it is they're going. So to be honest, I haven't looked at that angle. I didn't think it was an option. But if you help me understand, I can go back and do some research, and I will definitely look at that. And maybe, if you give me a better understanding, I might be able to answer you now. But if not, I will absolutely do the homework and the research and come back to you, because it is an angle that I hadn't looked at before.
And that's also a moment to have your decision tree almost in your head, like almost have a little diagnosis framework for your industry, for what you are doing. So if you are facing that particular moment, that these are the top 3 questions that I need to ask in this moment right now, because I only have this opportunity. If I need to come back later with facts and see if we can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. A decision tree is so important. And again, it's that crutch that you have when you need it, right? So it's really important to have that. So again, in your preparation, understand what the counter questions will be and preempt them, prepare for them. And if one comes out of left field, just ask them to elaborate and have your decision tree ready, yes. Because, you've got to be able to, first of all, buy yourself some time, but get their understanding. Because sometimes they might just throw a question at you that doesn't make any sense. You need to delve deeper into it. Don't be afraid to ask them to elaborate on what it is that they're asking. Because you're sincere enough and authentic enough to say, I want to understand what you mean by that. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know why you asked that question and why it's important. I want to get your perspective. I don't want to assume. So can you elaborate a little bit more? I
love that. So the stakes are sometimes very high when you sit on an executive board as a non-executive director, and there's many voices around the table. And I always say negotiation is not just about pitches and salaries. Sometimes you have to speak on behalf of people that are not in the room. Yeah. There is a responsibility in some points in our lives where we want to shift policy, we want to negotiate for the well-being, for the unjust that's happening in the world. So negotiation becomes something that we use in everyday life, but it's also something where the stakes are high.
Yeah.
And a lot of diplomacy needs to be embraced. But how do you also ensure when you are sitting at these tables that you have your voice heard? I think you used an example of taking the seat not behind, where there's not enough seats around the table, is grab the first seat. Where do you sit at the table? But then there's the other things around being in that room and making sure that you've asked at least 3 or 4 questions. What is your advice that you can offer women that are new to boards or going to step into a board? How do they prepare for that first board meeting, and also make sure that everything that they do is with negotiation in mind?
So that's a tough one, right? And that's a bit of a double weight, because you are a woman and because, you have your own biases that you need to break, right? But we need to understand that we're doing it for those that are not in the room, that we want to, like you rightfully say, change policy, that we want to break those systemic barriers, we want to push through those invisible ceilings, and that's a lot of weight on our shoulders to be able to do that. But if we break it down, we need to understand that if we are in that room and at that table, then we belong there, right? It might not offer you belonging, but you do belong there. And so you need to be able to, that's the first thing. You need to be able to know that you belong there. That this seat at this table, I'm here because of my worth and the value that I've brought, and I am here to contribute something. So that's important. So knowing that you belong. And then the second thing is to think about those people that you are speaking on behalf of, right? Who are not in the room, whose voice you are. So yes, it's a double weight, but see it as a double opportunity. Again, reframing for me is very big. Always reframe the negatives into a positive, right? It's a double opportunity, not, a double weight. So you have the opportunity to speak for yourself and for others. You have the opportunity to break systemic barriers. You have the opportunity to influence and to create a legacy or to start a legacy, right? So yes, it's a lot, but if you come prepared, if you are calm, if you are not there to sell your identity but to sell your value, then you have something to contribute, and you have an opportunity to speak up for yourself and for others. So do it. That opportunity has been afforded to you. Prepare for it, but it's there, and use it. And I would say to most women that find themselves in those decisions, in those boardrooms making those decisions, you do want to be able to advance yourself, but you also want to speak for the others that can't be in those rooms. And where I've done it before, it's been my biggest fulfillment, is not for myself, but for others. And I think that's important to know that, fine, it's a double weight, but I'm going to reframe it as a double opportunity, because I think about those that I can bring with me and those that I speak on behalf of. And I'm here. And a nice practical tip that someone spoke about, I think it was also at the Brave Collective conference, where they said, if you in that room, or you are saying a speech, or you are speaking to you on a panel or whatever, have a little post-it note on top of your notes that say why you are there. Why do they call you there? Why do they ask you to speak? Why do they give you that seat at the boardroom table? Why are you on that panel? And when you read through those 2 or 3 things, it helps with imposter syndrome, right? It's like, I see you, but I'm not letting you have a voice in my head right now. And then it gives you that confidence. And then when you have your facts and your research and you've prepped together, that's just magic, right? That's power.
I love that. It's great advice. I mean, we have now moved so quickly with this interview. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I thought we're only getting started, but now we have to bring it all together. So I think in closing, give me a few pieces of advice on how you have approached negotiation due to your failures and what you've experienced, and what has been your biggest lessons when it comes to the art of negotiation.
I think I'd have to say it again. Some of my, and stemming from some of my failures, is not understanding who was in the room and not understanding what was important to them. So just focusing on my solution and the benefits of that solution, but just focusing on the solution, not reading the room and understanding who was in the room. I think that's so important. It's one of my top 3 lessons, is understanding who's in the room and understanding what it means to them. What do they want out of it? And then speak to what they want out of it. Speak to that concept that they're trying to fix, avoid, and accomplish. That's so important, because if you do that, then you have their attention. And only when you have the attention can you give to them what you've prepared. Because then your preparation is nothing if they're not listening to you. So that's, I think, I think early on in my career, when I was so focused on the solution and the benefits and the technical bits of the solution, and I knew it in and out, but I did not know my audience. And that's very critical. Know your audience. So I would say that for sure. And preparation. Preparation is key. And if you've prepared 10,000 times, prepare 10,001. You cannot be more prepared than you already are. You just have to, did I say that the wrong way around? You've got to be more prepared than you think you are. And that's so important. Facts and figures and counter answers and what could go wrong. What could go wrong in that room? Because, it's like the whole analogy with the Navy SEALs, right? When they did a whole analysis, when they did not tell them what their training was going to be. They just said, be here at 8 a.m. sharp, and we're gonna do training. And then they would do their various training exercises, but they didn't tell them what was happening beforehand. They just said, be there at this time. When they told them the night before, we're going to send you into a burning building. There's going to be 3 flights of stairs. There's going to be a child at the top of the stairs. Your mission is to bring them down and bring them out safely within 5 minutes. The next day, when they went into that training simulation, they were better prepared. They were better prepared for it, and they actually had a better pass rate of those Navy SEALs inductions. Go and Google it. I don't know what the exact facts is, but that's what it was, right? But it's being prepared. It's understanding your landscape and your boardroom and the people in it and the counter answers that are going to, make you more prepared. And it's going to give you more confidence in your ability. I know this. I've been in it before. I know it. This is what is going to come at me, and I'm prepared for it. So that's important as well.
Phenomenal advice. Thank you so much for affording us this opportunity to chat to you today.
Thank
And
you.
to our listeners, I hope you've learned a bit about the negotiation skills that we need to have. First of all, always look at your non-negotiables. Always be prepared. Know the room, read the room, and be prepared. That is the most important things that we need in order for us to show up and take up space when we get into these rooms where we need to negotiate for whatever it might be, for your next job, for your salary, or whether it's for big decisions that impacts many, or just to create progress. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today. All right. Bye-bye now.